In conversation with Daryl Dittmer, after a humble and often tumultuous beginning to his life, Daryl Dittmer has worked relentlessly on himself for almost 40 years. Having hailed from a blue-collar family and upbringing, work ethics was instilled early and often. Dahl was put to work as a farm hand at an early age at $1.50 per hour and learned the immense value of hard work and long days. Since those days, Dahl has been a carpenter, sales professional, business owner, builder, landlord, real estate investor, and consultant. Now we are able to add author to that list. Dahl feels very fortunate to have had mentors assist him with his life journey and want nothing more than to pass on what was so graciously given to him. He considered it an honor to be in a position to do that. And on today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today, Daryl Dittmer. How are you doing, Daryl?
I am doing wonderfully. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to have you on the show. Quite exciting. We're going to be having a conversation around your writing.
Sounds
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. So, Da, I want to first say you have such an interesting title. When I stop fighting, the unexpected joy of getting my head out of my ass. And I like us to, hilariously start from there. How did you came up with your title? Were you in time past a terrific fighter?
Well, I guess I was. I was a terrific fighter at one point. Probably better at fighting myself, in terms of just life things. But the title came about. I had gotten sober at the age of 19 years old, so I
Mm,
I got involved in drinking and drugs early on in my life,
wow.
and went down a path that was pretty unforgiving. And did some things that just weren't what I was brought up to do, and what I was brought up to believe. So
Mm,
when I got sober, I actually went through a 30-day drug and alcohol treatment program. And when I came out of that, probably about 8 months later, I
yeah.
met a mentor whose name was Bud. And he tried to help me to quite honestly get my head out of my ass. But I grew up with a work ethic and a suck it up and walk it off mentality, and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
sort of the thinking was, the harder you try and the more you fight with things, the better off you are.
Mm,
No pain, no gain. All of those little cliches fit
yeah.
perfectly into how I was raised. So my thing was wrestling with problems. I'd wrestle with anything. I'd put up a fight and see how much I could do, and do it the hard way, and that sort of thing. So when I met my mentor, Bud, he said to me, which, as I was wrestling through some sort of a problem, he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops.
Mm.
And that made an incredible amount of sense to me. So that was how the book title came to be, and I've been working on doing a better job of that for ever since, which has been almost 40 years.
Wow. Wow, that's quite amazing, really. And I would love to say that's such a compelling title. And thank you for sharing on how the title itself came to be. Sounds quite captivating to me. So thank you. And now I'd also like to ask you, for readers who haven't read the book yet, and of course, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what I'd expect in terms of themes picking up when I stop fighting? And if you have a copy there, I'd love you to show to the camera just so viewers can see what it looks like.
Sure. No, I do. And this is what the book looks like. Um,
Beautiful.
I was, I guess, in terms of the book, it's my story and it's my journey, told through many of the stories that have made up my life. And so it starts with, me as a younger person, and carries that story through addiction and dysfunction and turmoil, and sobriety, taking risks, uh, going from pretty humble and tumultuous beginnings to a life that, quite honestly, I never could have dreamed of being so fortunate to have.
Mm.
Uh, Talks about my winning and my losing, and quite honestly, mostly losing, mostly failures, but
Mm.
some wins and some successes. And as the book talks about fighting, and when I stopped fighting, it really is talking about that inner sort of fight. It's not Daryl versus Mike Tyson or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
Daryl versus himself, and that's really what it boils down to, and I think where that fight for all of us is. So it's really a journey. It's a journey about going down a tough path, and then a journey about coming out of that and living a life that today I can wake up every day and feel that I love being alive, and I love doing what I do every day.
Mm.
So my intent at this point in my life is to share that story.
Wow, that's quite lovely, really. Thank you so much for sharing. I love the sound of it. And now, since we've been talking about the things, since we've been talking about fighting so far, now could you tell us some of the things you fought for in your life and how your life has changed ever since you decided to get on a different pathway? Would you love to talk about that?
Love to. Yeah, it's really, the fight is, again, it's more internal, but there are external things that we have to fight for.
Absolutely, yeah.
I I decided, at that fairly young age, that I wanted to fight for a better life, and I wanted to fight for, just feeling better. I wanted to fight for being able to look people in the eyes and have a
Mm.
conversation and feel like I was not burdened with insecurity and just not feeling good, and not feeling good about me and my life.
Mm.
So I wanted to fight for having some financial freedom. Quite honestly, that was important to me as well, and because I didn't grow up in a family with money. Um, so all of those things are things that I wanted to fight for. And I guess the paradox is I had to stop fighting with myself to be in a position to achieve those things and move toward those things, because I found over the course of time that the biggest uh, you know block to me moving forward is always me and the fight that I have with myself. So once I could clear that away, and it's a lifelong process, quite honestly. Once I've been doing it for a long, long time, and I still do it. And the fights are much more subtle than they used to be.
Mm.
Um, but they're still fights. There's still things that I need to stop fighting.
Wow. Wow, this is quite deep. This is quite emotional. This is quite compelling. This is quite educative and yeah, thought-provoking. So thank you so much for sharing. I love the sound of it. Thank you. And
Thank
now,
you.
are there any challenges that writing this book posed on you? If there are, could you share with us some of the challenges and how you ultimately overcame them?
Sure. Well, the first challenge was I told my wife probably almost 20 years ago. I said,
Yeah.
I was relating one of my stories of my youth, and and my wife was looking at me like, well, you just don't seem like that guy anymore.
Mm.
And I said, well, I'm not that guy anymore. And I said, in that conversation, I said, remind me to write a book someday. So that was almost 20 years. And she said to me, as I related more stories over the course of time, so when are you going to write the book? When are you going to write the book?
Mm.
And reminded me to it continually reminded me to write it. So the first challenge was, taking the time and making the time to sit down and write. And I think that's a huge challenge for almost anybody who wants
Yeah.
to put together a book, or whatever it is. It's taking the time to sit down and write. So once I started writing, um, there were very few challenges from the perspective of writing the book. I can be a little bit obsessive when it comes to tackling a project.
It's true.
So when I started writing the book, I had it written. Actually, I had one book written in about 3 months and two books written in about 5 months.
Wow.
And that all happened in 2023.
Wow.
So writing wasn't a challenge for me, but it was sitting down to do the writing, and it was sitting down to begin the writing.
Mm.
But it it was such a beautiful process. And then I guess the challenge after that was how do I turn my thoughts and whatever's going on into that? How do I turn it
Yeah.
into a book?
Yeah.
How do I didn't know about the editing process or the formatting process or the publishing process or anything like that.
Yeah.
So those were the next challenges, and I was lucky enough to find a place that helped me get it published.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. Sounds like a fun ride, really. Thank you for sharing.
It was a fun ride. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the sound of it. Thanks for the story. Now, what has been the value of mentors in your life? Plus, what was the reason you decided to write a book about your experiences? Would you like to talk about that?
I'd love to. That's a I'd love to, because my mentors have meant so much to me and so much to my life,
Mm,
and I'm just all throughout my life I've had mentors, and I don't think that it's, I guess my personal belief is that mentors will show up for most everyone. It's a matter of, am I willing and ready to be able to listen to a
mm,
mentor?
absolutely.
And and do what the mentor suggests. I think that's also a huge thing, in
Mm,
terms of value of mentors in our lives. But for me,
yeah.
Bud, as I mentioned, who was the person who uh, said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops, was he said so many things to me that were so crucial to moving my life forward.
Mm,
Just a quick example, he said, Daryl, first things first, and the rest shall be added on. If you keep first things first in your life, everything else will fall into place. And for that means my um, maintaining honesty with myself and with the
yeah.
world,
Yeah.
maintaining a sense of humility in regards
Yeah.
to knowing where I came from, maintaining faith. All of those things are incredibly important, and if I keep those first in my life,
Yeah.
the rest of my life unfolds in a way that's pretty cool. So I've had other mentors. I had a mentor that taught me um, breathing techniques. Pranayama, which is kind of a Hindi yoga breathing technique, and it's
Oh.
just a very cool thing and very life altering and expansive and that sort of thing. I had a mentor that taught me meditation techniques. So mentors have been indispensable for me in terms
Oh.
of moving my life forward, and I'm just extremely grateful that I've been able to have mentors, and now I feel like I'm in a position for anyone who's willing. I can be a mentor for other people, which is
Yeah.
which is giving it back.
Incredible.
So
Yeah.
that's my intent.
Wow, that's beautiful to know. I love the sound of it. That's amazing, and I can relate to you it's so amazing actually to have mentors, and they tend to lead you, guide you through when you feel even when you feel discouraged that you can do this. Having a mentor around, it all looks very helpful to guide you through and see you through and encourage you and hold your hands in the right. It all looks very important, irrespective of any category of life, any junction that we have. Mentorship is very important. And I love your take on that actually. Thank you for sharing the values yours have with you in your life. Beautiful to know.
Thank you.
Beautiful to know. Thank you. Now, apart from When I Stopped Fighting, do you have any other works you've authored or say currently working on?
I do. When I started writing this book, I just went straight into writing another one. And
Wow.
so this one is When I Stop Fighting, the unexpected joy of getting my head out of my ass. The next one is called When You Stop Fighting, and the subtitle is The Road You're On Is Your Own Asphalt.
Wow.
Um, so it talks about our life's trajectory, why we're potentially heading in the direction we're heading, how to recognize, certain things, because sometimes people just don't recognize that they have a trajectory or that they can change the trajectory of their lives, and that's what this book
Hmm.
focuses on.
Wow.
So I'm excited for that to come out. I would say probably third quarter of 2024, and Peter, I will certainly let you know when that happens.
Wow. It's amazing. I love this particular order title, and it sounds as if, it's a book one and it's like a follow-up to the first book. And, the title itself, I love your titles. They're quite idiomatic in nature and a bit metaphorical. So that's quite beautiful. That's quite beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds like it's a
Thank you. I
journey. There's a
appreciate that.
first phase and there's a second phase. Beautiful enough. Thank you.
There, there's actually, Peter, there's going to be a third phase. I
Wow.
have another one outlined. And then when I told my wife, she said, you should write a book. And then when I wrote this one and wrote the other one, I said, you know what, I'm going to commit to three. If I'm going to commit to one, I'm going to commit to three. So I'll keep you
Wow.
posted on number three, but could be a little
Beautiful.
while. We'll see.
I would love that. That's amazing. Thank you so much. That's amazing. Now, is there anything that you love to share with the viewers about your book that we did not mention in this interview and you'd love the viewers to know?
I think it's so important for there's a lot of books out there, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of wonderful books out there that have been written over the years and tens of years and hundreds of years and even more. And it's just such a beautiful experience to delve into reading and books and learning and all that sort of thing. And I
Yeah.
love that. I love doing that, and that's certainly shaped my life.
Mm,
I want people to know that my book, if you're interested in it, it's about my experiences and it's about my story. And I don't ever want to tell anyone what to do or how to live or what they should do with their lives. What my intent is to share my story and share how I've, been helped and how things went for me, so that when you read it, you can either relate to it or you can't. And I think, the most important thing in terms of relating is we all have emotions that we go through. We all probably have similar emotions: joy,
yeah.
fear, anger, happiness,
Absolutely.
sadness, all those sorts of things. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important as we share stories to be able to relate at that emotional level. So that's how I wrote my book. It was, it's not a you should do this kind of thing. It's a I
Mm.
hope you can relate to my stories, and maybe that will help you with your story.
Wow. This is beautiful, really. This is very amazing. And I love your answers to this question. Thank you for answering.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would love you to read a short section of your book to the audience. But before then, I would love to ask you, as a published author, what sort of advice do you offer other writers who are still struggling with writing and publishing a memoir like yours? What would you advise people in this category?
That's great. And I love that question, because for me, as
Yeah.
my story goes, and as you heard, it took me 20 years
Wow.
almost to sit down and write after I told my wife, remind me to write a book someday. So the best advice I can give to somebody is, especially as regards a memoir, is just sit down, just take the time and start writing. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, you know, great day one. You just write. And then I found that as I wrote, things just bubbled up inside of me. They just
Mm,
memories came back, things just sort of flooded in. There
yeah.
became a real resonance to the writing process for me, so that it just felt like I knew I was writing the right things. I knew I was, saying the right things. So the best piece of advice I can give is, just, if you really want to do it, just sit and just write and it'll happen.
Wow. Thank you so much for your advice. And I'm hoping that viewers would love to utilize it. Thank you so much. Now, would you like to read a short section of your book to the audience? It could be your favorite line, your favorite paragraph, or even a favorite page if you would love to.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. I actually have a story that I think is
Yeah, let's do
is
it.
will resonate, and it's fairly short. Stay small was what Jimmy used to say in those 12-step meetings at the community center back in the late 1980s.
Mm,
Jimmy was a very slight, older gentleman who was a little bent over when he walked. Jimmy didn't speak often, but when he did, everyone listened. I think at that time he'd been sober almost 40 years.
mm,
To me, and many of the young people trying to stay sober and reasonably sane early on, Jimmy was a bit of a deity. He would
wow.
get up from the tables from time to time and refresh people's coffee. Nobody did that but Jimmy. Incredibly selfless guy, and he probably had more wisdom in his little finger than the rest of us idiots put together. Jimmy used to say that if you want to stay sober, you must stay small. He was telling us that humility was a very basic building block of attaining wisdom, and that
Mm,
if we wanted it, keep a cork in it and listen. At least that's what I got out of it. Thank you, Jimmy.
wow. This sounds like a letter to Jimmy, and I love your take in there. Those are quite words that we can utilize to make our life better. I love the sound of it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you for allowing me to share that. I love that
absolutely.
story. It's beautiful to
Yeah,
me.
you're welcome. And now, in case we have some viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of your book. On what platform is it available on for purchase?
It's on Amazon.com. It can also be purchased on my website, which is Daryl Dittmer, DarylDittmer.com. And that's two places where the book can be found and purchased.
That's great. And I left a link in the discussion part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of the Dietmar book directly on Amazon and also on his website. So thank you so much, Dal, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome having this conversation around your memoir.
Thank you, Peter. I loved it, and I appreciate the great questions, and I appreciate you allowing me to talk about my book. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine.